evening everyone. We know that India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. In fact, the economy has grown at more than 7% in the past 5 years. However, if we look at the employment stats, the numbers show rather a grim reality. The agenda for today's discussion is unemployment in India, and the reason we have gathered here is to discuss this issue based on the report published by Business Standard that claims India's unemployment rate that stood at a 45-year-old high last year. To discuss this issue in detail, we have on board today a diverse panel of experts. Let us firstly look at a detailed analysis prepared by this panel before we open the floor for discussion.
Business Standard recently claimed that the unemployment rate in India stands at a dismal 6.1%, which is the highest in the last 45 years. The official Periodic Labour Force Survey (PLFS) conducted by the National Sample Survey Office reports an unemployment rate of 5.3% in rural and 7.8% in urban India. However, the government officials debunked these claims. They have questioned the veracity of the data, stating that the numbers are inflated due to a change in the sampling methodology by the NSSO. They have deemed this data as incomparable with the past. Now the question here is, are these numbers telling us the true story? Let's find out. To demystify the reasons for unemployment in India, we have arrived to three main causes: lagging employment generation, substandard quality of existing jobs, and a drop in female labor force participation rates. Apart from the traditional causes of unemployment, these three have been the most pressing issues which signify the increase in unemployment numbers compared to the past. Now let us understand each one of these in detail. The first one is the lagging employment generation. The growth in the number of new job opportunities is simply not matching up with the increase in employable workforce. Due to a growing population and a rather increasing education level, the employable workforce is increasing, which is overweighing the number of new jobs coming up, hence leading to a higher unemployment. The second is a rather interesting one: substandard quality of existing jobs. Now in some sectors we do have jobs, but the quality of these new jobs created by the government has been poor, due to which the educated youth does not want to take these up and they rather prefer to drop out of the labor force. Hence the labor force participation has been declining while unemployment rate is increasing. The rising level of educated youth with higher aspiration levels lead to disappointment with quality of existing jobs, which further leads to people dropping out of the labor force. The third is the declining female labor force participation in India. Despite being employable and having the ability to add up to the employed numbers, some females, especially in rural India, are dropping out of the workforce. The possible explanation: as the household income stabilizes, women lose incentive to earn and drop out of the workforce. Now let's talk about a few recommendations to reduce the unemployment rates. Number 1. Boost job creation in the manufacturing industry. Since jobs in the manufacturing and operations industries are labor intensive and require less skills, the employability of rural sector increases manifold. A move from service to manufacturing industry will drive up the LFPR, especially for the rural areas of India. The second is increase trade exports to encourage formal sector employment for youth. Reformed local labor markets and a growing trade export would result in both new and better jobs, which would further result in better wages and eventually increasing the labor force participation and the employment. The third is to incentivize female workforce in rural areas and informal sectors of urban areas. This would be done by providing minimum wages and insurances to cover for the uncertain times when the work demand is low. And hence, more participation from the female workforce could increase the employed numbers. The fourth is the vocational skills training to standardize labor force and increase employability. The problem of lack of skills in the workforce is highlighted by the fact that even many graduates passing out of college with a degree are termed unemployable due to lack of required skills. Hence, skill improvement is another important aspect which would increase employability and eventually reduce the unemployment. Now let us talk about the data behind the unemployment rates. To do away with any sort of challenges to the unemployment numbers, we need to have an accurate and compatible sampling method. The periodic labor force survey used currently is different from the EUS survey which was used before. Herein, the NSSO have moved their stratification base from income expenditure to education levels. However, this method, although reliable, has its share of limitations. To do away with these limitations, now let us look at some recommendations to recalibrate the unemployment survey methods so as to ensure accurate measurement and less challenge to the existing data. The first is to avoid redundancy of data while sampling households. Education is more identifiable than income only if the samples are not recounted. Hence, a well-segmented MECE sample based on education levels will ensure an accurate reflection of education in employability. The second is a revised standard definition of unemployment. The current weekly status considers a person as employed if he or she has worked for at least 1 hour in a day during the 7 days preceding to the date of survey. However, this is not indicative of the long-term employability of the person in consideration. In contrast, the US has the reference period of 1 year. Use of multiple measurement methods lead to variation in numbers which lose compatibility when compared with the international standards. Hence, we need to follow the global standards to come up with the standard definition of unemployment and to recalibrate the calculation methods.
Well, that was a pretty comprehensive analysis that we saw there. What are your comments on the same, Mr. Vaibhav?
Well, we've always had some discussions on the traditional causes and methods of tackling unemployment. But hearing the causes such as the substandard quality of jobs seem to be the more pressing issues in the recent times. Hence, I believe that we as a country have jumped too soon from agriculture sector to the service sector. To solve this current problem of unemployment, I think we should go back and tap the manufacturing sector because it is the more labor intensive sector which can produce more jobs to tackle the problem of unemployment for us.
I think the sector shift is something that even I agree to. Tarusri, what would you like to say on the same?
Well, the video captures the situation quite well. Apart from talking about the issue of unemployment, it also talks about the standards of measuring unemployment rates. With a revised definition to global measurements of unemployment rates and better sampling mechanisms, we would definitely reach a better consensus.
Thank you, Tarusri. But before ending the discussion, let's hear from the experts regarding the success criteria of the unemployment numbers that the government should target going forward.
The government can refer to the Okun's law to arrive at a reasonable growth rate. Now, Okun's law is a key relationship in macroeconomics, which implies that a GDP growth of 3% should ideally result in a decrease of 1% in employment rate. And to some extent, I'll agree to Vaibhav's point also that the labor-intensive industries are the key area where we can reduce the unemployment rate. To shed more light on this, I think Unmesh would be a better person to comment on.
Yeah, so the real GDP growth and the unemployment rate have a bidirectional causality. But to predict the unemployment rate accurately, we need to know India's full level of employment. Since we do not know that, we can go with the real GDP growth, which is about 7.1% according to CMIB data. And so accordingly, unemployment rate of India should be around 3 to 4% for the next year.
I agree with you, Unmesh. So I think we all can come to a consensus that the road ahead is to follow the recommendations and target the unemployment rate to a reduced number of 3.5%. Thank you all for being a part of the panel tonight.